Welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. We've got 3 guest speakers today. I know they're going to share a lot of knowledge, so I don't want to waste too much time with our introductions, but I do want to go over some quick housekeeping guidelines just to make sure that everyone is comfortable and confident in this next hour. So first of all, thanks for spending time with us, whether you're here live or rewatching. We know that lots of crazy things are going on in the world. You could be doing anything else with your time, but you're deciding to be with us intentionally. So thank you for showing up today. And with that said, if you're here live, we would love to hear from you. We would love for you to participate, and you can do so in a couple of ways. You can turn on your cameras if you feel called to do so, but no shame if you don't feel like it. I know that video fatigue is real, but I know that some folks might need that extra invitation. We'd love to share some, FaceTime with you. So feel free to turn your cameras on. Otherwise, go ahead and make use of the chat whenever you have any of your own lived experience that you'd like to share, any tips and tricks of your own, any resources. I also will be inviting you all to network amongst yourselves in the chat. So be looking out for that invitation, because I really want to use this time to, get to know each other and support each other in this ever-changing landscape. So my main point there is to make sure you use the chat. If you were able to send us questions previous to this conversation, great. If not, and a question comes up in the moment, use the chat to drop that question. And as time allows, I will raise that question or reflection to our guest speaker. Now, if anyone has any sensitive information and you prefer to be kept anonymous, that's great. Just find me in the chat box under Mariella Marie. You can write to me privately there, and I will raise your question or your reflection and keep you anonymous. The last thing I'll say is that we would love for you to follow Power to Fly on socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And remember that this is being recorded. So if anyone hops off mute anytime, you will be featured in our live recording, as well as if you signed up for this conversation, you will get a rewatch email, and that rewatch email will include a link to this recorded video for you to rewatch and send to your community, as well as any links to resources that our guest speakers might bring up throughout the hour. So be sure to look out for that rewatch email. Now I'll just take a couple seconds to introduce myself before I pass the mic to our guest speakers. So as I said before, I'm calling from Argentina and Patagonia, the original lands of the Mapuche people. And I love speaking about how we can bring our emotional intelligence to the work that we do or to our communities. And so if anyone would like to philosophize or share actionable tips on how we can deepen our emotional intelligence in the workplace or at home, feel free to connect with me. You can go to thepositiveforceteam.org. I'm also producing a beautiful podcast on Grow Dialogue. That's called the Grow Dialogue podcast. So I invite you all to check me out there. Otherwise, happy to connect on LinkedIn. All right, so without further ado, Amir, let's start with you. Let's kick us off here. Let us know a little bit about yourself. And I know you're gonna take a bunch of questions that folks have previously submitted, but let us know why you do what you do and what you're excited to share with us today.
Awesome, cool. Thanks so much, Mariella. My name is Amir. I'm calling in from Los Angeles. I'm the CEO of Hops. And Hops is this kind of passion project I've had for like a very long time. I've always thought that was really cool that someone could actually be able to help you do something that you're doing right now. But the whole challenge is, how do you find that person and how do you get to collaborate with them in real time? So it's been something that's been in the back of my head for about a decade now, as I kind of taught myself how to code and went through the motions of like teaching myself a bunch of different tools. And finally in 2019, I decided to kind of take that next step and formalize the process and start a company called Hops, which is the world's first platform to get instant help with the tools we use at work. And so, again, it's something that I think the world needs. People just need to be able to get their work done, jump into a screen share session, walk through like whatever issue you're having, and then be able to move on with your day. And I think that that's been the reason why I started Hops. And my past is, I have been an engineer for about 12 years now. And so that's been kind of like my background. And now I'm working on Hops, and I'm kind of like super, super passionate about this idea of distributed kind of labor workforces, like people being able to collaborate with others without having to actually be there in person and be able to find that person in Argentina or Russia or somewhere else in the world in seconds and be able to really work with them and get their expertise and compensate them for that. So it's something that I'm really, really kind of passionate about. And yeah, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Amir. And I know we're going to learn more about you as you answer some of these questions that we'll get into in just a moment. But I do want to pass the mic to Christina. Let us know a little bit about yourself, why you do what you do as well, and what you're excited to cover in this next hour. I know I threw a lot of questions at you already, but take it as you'd like.
I love your hat, by the way. I just can't, I want one right now. Um, So, hi guys, my name is Christina. I've been doing the digital marketing world for a while. I was working agencies and I decided to open up my own shop. And now I help hundreds of, small businesses, startups through consulting. It's a huge passion of mine. I find that I have a much bigger impact when I work individually with people. And that is one of the reasons why I loved Hops and I signed up to be an expert. I've done about 100 sessions there. So I obviously really enjoy it. The best thing about being in digital marketing, but also being able to help somebody immediately is that connection and giving somebody exactly what they need at the exact moment that they need it. I'm sorry, I'm getting that it's a little hard to hear me. I hope I can get a little closer to the mic. You're
I
good?
can hear you fine. Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm excited to answer any of those questions and to continuously help anybody that is going through the landscape of the ever-changing tools and work.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christina. And I know that, again, when you roll into these responses that you're going to offer, we're going to learn more about you. So can't wait to learn more about you there. All right. So last but not least, Trey, let us know a little bit about yourself, what you do, why you do what you do, and what you're excited to share with us in this next hour.
Sure. My name is Trey Kaufman. I am an entrepreneur here in Columbus, Ohio. I started my business, I think, in 2018. I bounced around from company to company every couple of years, just searching for something that was going to bring me fulfillment before I finally had the courage to relearn web design and launch my own web design and marketing agency. And I've been doing that for a handful of years now. It's been so powerful being able to make my own schedule, empowering myself to work with clients that I truly love working with. And it's been so much fun. I'm also a former podcaster. I hosted the Mosaic Life podcast through 150 episodes. And through that, I got to have conversations with leaders from all over the world, talking with them about lifestyle design and what they're doing to live their very best lives. And that's become my main pursuit, living a life that I'm excited to wake up to every single day. And through being an entrepreneur, solopreneur, whatever you want to call it, I've been able to build the life that I'm truly proud of. And I actually met Christina a couple of years ago, and then she introduced me to Hops. And so now I'm a WordPress expert on Hops, and I'm so excited and so thankful to be here.
Awesome. You all are super fascinating folks. So we're going to jump into the questions, but I love for Amir, can you set the stage for us by covering these 3 takeaways for today's conversation before we roll into the questions?
Yeah, of course. So I think we all know that there's a lot of tools in the world, and there's so many tools coming out every single day. So the question we get the most is, how do you find which tools to use and how do you stay relevant to them? So that's one of the things we definitely want to cover today. The other piece is, how do you kind of prioritize learning a tool and how do you kind of educate yourself? It's, obviously we have our careers, we have our lives that we have to be, cognizant of. And then you also have to split that time with learning the tools that make you successful at your job. So how do you prioritize your time and effort when it comes to the education of these tools? And then finally, what tools should you be investing in, right? And how are they going to have an impact on the career that you want to go down? And so, we definitely want to cover all 3 of those, and we're probably going to cover some more topics too, but these are the main takeaways that I think are going to be super cool to dig into.
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can pull up these awesome questions that folks have submitted previous to this conversation. And I just want to call out again, if anything comes to mind, if you weren't able to submit a question beforehand, it's never too late. We'd love to hear from you. So just drop it in the chat. And what's up for those who are turning their cameras on? I see you all. Thank you for representing there. All right. So let's start with this first question here. Amir, I'd love for you to tackle this one. So what are the most common business tools we can use and how can we keep up with them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think every small business needs to kind of start off thinking about productivity and collaboration. So the tool I love the most there is Google Workspace. Workspace has Docs, Sheets, Drive, Meet, email, calendar, a bunch of different tools that are super essential to how you use and kind of collaborate with your coworkers. So that's the tool I love the most. It's cloud-based, so you don't have to download anything. It's easy to use in this new kind of post-COVID world where everything is remote. It makes that collaboration on the same kind of documents you're working on super easy. And it kind of gives you the power of all these essential tools that every business needs really, really quickly. And it's, super easy to set up. Within minutes, you can be up and running with it. So I think that's one thing that I think every small business needs is a productivity collaboration tool like Google Workspace. For communication, I think Slack is super, super important. Slack allows you to, again, like remotely collaborate with your coworkers, send them quick messages. It's great for things that you need to communicate that aren't supposed to be in an email. And so I think Slack is something we use here at Hops all the time, and it's something that has quickly gained a lot of traction in the business world. I think every business needs to think about, like, how do you kind of, if someone wants to set up an appointment with you or kind of like get to meet you in some way, how do you find time on someone else's calendar? And for that, I love Calendly. It's a super popular tool. It's also super easy to use. You can kind of link your Google Calendar or Microsoft Outlook calendar to it. And then you're able to give that link to someone, and that person can find time on your calendar and basically schedule appointments with you. So I think any kind of business that requires appointments and meeting people, I think you need to have a calendar tool. Then I think the other essential piece is now going into kind of like website and online presence. I think every single company needs to think about, even if you're a brick and mortar kind of company, think about a website or like an online presence. And so for that, I love Webflow and Squarespace. I think that if you're an e-commerce store, obviously Shopify is huge, and that's something that a lot of companies who are in the e-commerce internet selling space, they use Shopify. But Webflow and Squarespace are super easy, kind of no-code solutions that allow anyone who doesn't have the ability or doesn't have the prowess to basically, put up a website from scratch. It lets them get one up and running very, very quickly. The other one I think that we use here at Hops, again, that's super useful in terms of productivity and like kind of task and goal management is Monday.com. So Monday is this kind of like project management tool that basically you can kind of set up your whole staff on, and you can kind of assign tasks and be able to work with them and set deadlines, due dates. And it's really, really cool in terms of being able to see what's going on across the board for your company, what someone's working on, where things are, if something's in progress, if something is done. Again, all these tools I'm mentioning are super, super easy to use. And that's the best part, right? Like as a new business, you don't want to be focused on using a tool and getting it up and running. You want to be working on your business. So these essential tools kind of let you get these up and running, and then you can kind of focus on the needs of your business much more. So I'll kind of give the mic over to Christina, and she can cover some of the marketing tools that I think are super essential for a small business.
So in general, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to any sort of tools, the most important part is what you're getting out of them, not the tools specifically, but what it will enable you to do and what the benefits to your business would be. So I would highly, highly recommend at any business for you to have an analytics tool. Google Analytics is my favorite so far. I've been using it for years now. It just is one of the most robust solutions out there, and it truly helps you tie in the big picture of every single thing that you're doing and the actual impact in your business. I think that for marketing, there's so many different tools. I think that ads, Google ads, Facebook ads, TikTok ads, I know it could be a little overwhelming, but I think that every one of these is worth the test. The moment that you actually start something, you see the impact of your business, don't just stop because, hey, Facebook ads is not working for me, so like ads don't work for me at all. Definitely try to test everything that is out there and see what is most beneficial for you.
I love this. I love the idea of testing it out, and also to find find something that works best for you, because we're all different. We're like snowflakes, and I'm referencing snowflakes because I see them in front of me right now. So I'm just being really literal, but we are all different. And so we're not going to pick up the same tool and use it in the same way. So I love that both of you are focusing on, that individual, piece to it, that the thing that makes us, creative or show our voice or, be who we are and not have to just, fit to the social norm, which I'm pretty much of a rebel there. So I love seeing like what's new and how can I test that? So I love test comes out with your response, Christina. And so actually, Trey, I'd love to bring this next question to you because, as tools come out and we try, we test, and we say this doesn't work for us, or, the next person has come up with the next best thing. there's this big learning curve, right? So Amir hinted to, we don't want to focus on the tool, we want to focus on our work. So this question leans into that, and it reads, how do we prioritize our study time? How do we manage our time when we're working, but we want to keep learning?
That's a powerful question, and something that I've gone through multiple times and I'm going through again. The word is priority. It's setting a priority for yourself that you actually want to learn and improve, not just your situation, but your life as well. And a lot of times that will mean spending less time going out to the bar, or spending less time with your family, or putting your family to bed, and you yourself spending an hour or two studying and working on your own personal development, losing sleep in the process. But making sure that you set the time aside to sit down for 15, 20, 30 minutes and start to work on that next module that you're working on, and see if you can enter that flow state where an hour or two later, you find yourself looking at the clock, realizing that that time's just flown by, and seeing how much progress you've made. In terms of going back to the last question, tools, and finding one that works best for you, I was going to mention Codecademy. I love that tool because it's not a video-based learning platform. It's a get in there and write the code yourself platform that works for me. And there's a lot of great video platforms out there like Udemy and several others. So whatever works best for you, find that tool and utilize it as best as you can. So really it's making sure that you're setting the time aside for yourself to sit down, work, and realize that you may be making sacrifice in the short term for benefits in the long term.
I love that. I love that. Thank you, Trey, for giving that insight. So Christina, I want you to take us into this next response here. We talk a lot about mentorship here on these Chat and Learns, and the importance of mentorship. And I'm interested in hearing your response to this question that reads, is it necessary to find a mentor that will help us keep up with the ever-changing technology at work?
I think mentorship is incredibly important. For this specific question, I wouldn't say that you need a mentor in order to address, all the changing tools, but you definitely need to establish a trusted resource, somebody who you really believe that, understands exactly how to do this, and then somebody who understands your unique challenges and how these changes are applicable to you. I feel like so often we're constantly trying to find custom solutions to our problems through generic resources. And we're like, why doesn't this work? Or why doesn't this, apply to me in the way that I need it to? So that's where trusted resources come, and they're so important. I can't tell you how often I encounter clients that come to me and they say, hey, like I found this guy somewhere or this girl somewhere, and they completely messed up my setup. They said that they know what they're doing, but they really didn't. So we spend so much time trying to undo the wrongs and then reestablishing the whole system. So that's where it's so important for you to have somebody who you vetted, somebody that you trust, that you can always go to and say, hey, this new thing came out. What does that mean for me? And how can I implement it best?
And just to dig deeper there on that, what's the best way to find that person? Do you recommend, networking online, or going to different events, or, going back to school? I know a lot of people are also self-taught, so would love to ask you to help us navigate that, like finding that person who knows all things.
There's a number of different ways, to be honest, word of mouth, right? Or somebody has already vetted somebody for you, and that's somebody that you trust, so their opinion matter. Of course, sites exactly like Hops kind of do that. Whereas Upwork doesn't necessarily. Anybody can come on Upwork. Anybody can say that they know something, versus really going to those resources where somebody has done that work for you, somebody has vetted them. That is really, really important.
I love that. So speaking of, I know that a lot of folks are here with us live, and maybe some of you have lots of information that you'd love to share. So this is just the perfect time for me to say, please continue, actually start, because I haven't seen anyone doing it yet. Start to network in the chat box. You can drop your preferred ways of connecting, or if you have any projects or websites that you want to highlight, please do that. And I encourage you all to respectfully reach out to folks. And if anyone wants to offer their knowledge on these things, I always find it really helpful when I hear the way people talk about certain things, and I'm like, oh yes, I need that perspective. And especially as things are changing all the time, we need so many different perspectives, because if not, we see what happens when we're just pigeonholed into thinking one certain way. So as new technologies are being created, and we're experimenting and testing and seeing what fits us best, I find, it's useful to make use of moments like this and, offer up your skill set or offer up your voice. So feel free to connect in the chat. And also I want to shout out if anyone has any tools that they've been using these days, anything new or anything that's just like, that anchors them in their work, please drop those as well in the chat. Because I know that, they're just skimming the surface. These are things that work for them. And as we mentioned in the beginning, everyone has their own things that work for them. So use the chat box, everyone. All right, Amir, I'm gonna come back to you on this next question here that reads, what are some strategies we can use to help employees to adapt to new technologies and keep learning?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the first thing to kind of help employees like even think about technology at in the workplace, I think first they have to kind of understand what the purpose of a tool or technology is. And I think a lot of times we kind of like throw tools and throw technologies at coworkers and employees, and we just kind of expect them to understand we need this, someone else is using it, let's go ahead and use it ourselves, this must change the world for us. And that's not the way it works. So you kind of have to understand first, what's the purpose of a tool? Why are we using it? And what's the context of using this tool within the kind of the business functions that you're trying to achieve? And once you're kind of established that kind of fundamental framework, I think then you can now surround them with resources, right? So the employee now knows that this is what I have to do. This is what the tool is being used for. And now how do I get there? So give them resources, right? Give them stipends so they can take classes and courses. Because honestly, the lost productivity that comes with the wasted time and kind of energy of an employee trying to figure these things out on their own is it's really, really detrimental to a business. There's a loss of morale for the employee. There's underutilization of the tool itself. And so for an employer to go ahead and surround them with these resources, it will not only help, there's initial cost with that sometimes, but that helps really build that confidence in the employee that the employer cares about them and wants them to be successful at their job. So I think that's super important, is to kind of give them those resources to make the most of these new tools that they're using after you're establishing what the purpose of these tools is for that employee. And then lastly, I think it's really important not to introduce too many tools and technologies at once. And I think sometimes, like, again, to what I was saying earlier, we kind of go out and we see like a bunch of little shiny objects and shiny tools, and we want to try and use all of them. And that can lead to like this kind of exhaustion. You get exhausted doing that because there's always going to be something shinier, something a little bit better. And again, to what Christina and Trey were saying earlier, it's really about how you are able to use this tool for you and your company. And once you're able to figure that out and you're not introducing too many of these at once, you're able to then get the employee to even like self-teach themselves and really think about, okay, this is what I need to do with this. And this is so important for my job function. Well, let me go ahead and learn this better and better, because this will not only help me within my current job, but also in the future. So I think resources are important again. I think giving them a purpose towards why they're using these tools. And then lastly, not introducing too many of them at once. I think those are all super important when you're introducing new technologies at work.
I love that. Thank you, Amir. I would love to hear if Christina and Trey would also like to comment, because I know this is a really complex question. So I want to give you all space to respond as well.
Go ahead, Christina.
I know I'm waiting. Are you going to speak? Am I? I think everything that Amir said is very, very valid. It's so important for you to truly understand what you want out of that tool. And also, it's so important for you to understand exactly all the things that tool is capable of before you switch to other things. A lot of my customers, my clients, utilize maybe 50-60% of a tool that they're currently paying for, that they're currently integrating into their system. So truly understanding the full capacity of it and how you can make the most out of it relevant to your business, I think is really important.
And I'll just kind of piggyback on what Christina said. It's not about finding the shiny new object and going after it. It's really digging in deep. If you're the one in charge of making a decision based on that tool, make sure that it's going to not only just provide the tools that the product that you're already using is, but it's going to go above and beyond for you and really help you excel in regard to your metrics in your business.
I love that. And so just to hold you all on this question here, what's a good way to know that it's working? I say this because Trey, you just brought up metrics, and I know we're going to talk about that a little later too, but let's just dive into it now. So how do you know it's a success? Is it because, you roll out of bed and you can use it with your eyes closed, or is it because, your business is growing? How do you all navigate that? I'll start with Trey since you ended the first one.
I was going to defer to Amir. For me, because again, I work for myself. I'm kind of in a unique position where I use a set number of tools, and if for the way I personally regard something as being worthwhile for me, is it saving me time? If I'm able to automate pieces of my work and it saves me time and gives me back the only resource that I cannot renew, that is a win for me. That is the metric that I care most about. But I know, somebody that has a team and a company behind them will probably have a different answer than I do.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think there's a magic like moment where you just kind of think that, yeah, this is it. Like we know everything we need to know about this tool. I think it differs tool to tool, situation to situation. There's some that will never be completely utilized. You won't be able to use this tool effectively you'll be able to use it, but are you maximizing the potential? Maybe never. I'm sure there's lots of companies who are paying tons of money for tools like Salesforce out there who will never be able to actually get the most out of that tool, even though they're spending all this money and resources for it. And so I really think it's tough to put like a metric on like, okay, this tool is giving me this much productivity. I think what you can see is, again, you have to keep track of employees and morale, and you have to keep track of how they're feeling about like using a tool. And is it really kind of helping them progress, like really making a difference in the things that they need to do day to day. And I think if you're close enough to your team and you're able to kind of like navigate that, well, are you really using this? Is this really helping you? You can get that sense of frustration or this is amazing very, very quickly. And so again, there's no magic moment. I think it's more just being very in tune with the humanity of a person and the team and kind of like dictating yourself, okay, this tool is really working or this is not working. And let's figure out either this will never work because my team doesn't like this, or let's find something better, right? Like, or let's just find something better that they do like using. And so I think it's a tricky, like, there's no one answer fits all, is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Back to my snowflake reference in the beginning.
Yep, exactly.
And I love the emotional intelligence piece on, basically empathizing with your team, like connecting with the human before the tool to see if it's actually working for everyone. And then adjusting what does productivity mean for all of us in this case, since, you're speaking to the humans that are using the tool. Yeah. And Christina, before you comment, I would love to highlight something that Stephanie wrote here in the chat. Whenever we have new technologies, whenever we have new technologies we have to roll out, we have a collaboration center that lists the technologies, office hours, and a tool SME admin that we can meet with. So it sounds like they have some nice, options and reinforcement for support and all that. And so I would love to hear you all comment on that if you'd like, when the time is right. Christina, though, I would love for you to add your reflections as well.
When it comes to working at different companies, I feel like so many have used different tools. And it is important, as Amir said, to really listen to the people, because if it's too big of a pain for you to learn something, you won't use it, you won't utilize it, it just won't be as good as it could potentially be. So it is important not only for somebody to take the pulse of their employees, but it's important to understand the additional cost to having a new tool. It's not only the subscription or it's not only the yearly payment. It truly is, how long is it going to take for everybody to ramp up? How long is it going to take for somebody to, be frustrated with something if they don't understand it? Because so often I use a tool and I'm like, oh, this is supposed to make my life easier. Great. And then I'm stuck there for an hour trying to find the smallest little thing. And it's so frustrating. It's demoralizing to the employee, being like, okay, am I like that dumb that like there's no button here where it needs to be or something? And then ultimately it really impacts the work, the quality of the work, the amount of brain space that you have to use for it. So if anybody ever sees any of those red flags when they use it or when their workers use it, definitely reevaluate it sooner rather than later.
I love that. Staying in tune. I think that word you used, Amir, earlier, tuning in, and basically all of you are saying that, to check in, tune in. And maybe that's even a lot for some folks, as we're asking leaders to do things differently, and that means tuning in more. So if you're not tuning in, you're going to cause a lot of hassle when these new tools come into play. So I love that you all are shining a light there. All right, so let's move on to this next question. Trey, I'd love for you to take this one up first. So what are some platforms we can use to learn about new technologies?
There are great platforms that everybody consumes on a daily basis. Generally, podcasts are great for finding new tools. Newsletters, there's just a ton of great newsletter content out there right now. One of my favorites is Tim Ferriss's 5 Bullet Fridays. He's usually recommending some sort of new tool or niche film or something of the sort that I enjoy consuming. But some of my favorite places to actually find new tools that I've never heard of, because they haven't blown up, they haven't been on Product Hunt, are social media, both TikTok and Instagram. When I started engaging with creators out there who highlight new tools that are out there for web developers and designers, I just started getting a ton of that in my feed. And now every time I launch one of those apps, I get fed 5 or 10 new different tools that I've never heard of before. And I don't need to go explore them right away, but I will save them. And then if I and working on a problem that I realize that I found a solution to, I'll just go back and give it a shot. It's there are generally free tiers for all of these tools, and just giving them a try it allows me the opportunity to, again, improve my workflow and save some extra time. So for me, my favorite place to find new tools is social media, actually. And actually, speaking of which, on LinkedIn, Christina, I'm going to give her an endorsement. She is always recommending new tools and new technology stories on her LinkedIn feed, and it's phenomenal.
Awesome. So we'll be sure to add everyone's preferred ways of connecting in the rewatch email, unless anyone wants to drop them now in the chat for easy access. And I do see some folks who are joining live, dropping their LinkedIns and preferred ways of connecting. So continue to do that, everyone. We really do want you to connect with each other here. We've got about 30 minutes left, so let's use this time wisely. All right, so let's move on to this next question here. Christina, I'd love for you to tackle this one here. So how can we choose between so many tools and programs and know that they are worth the investment?
We touched up on a lot of the way that we need to think about this, and it's the end result, right? It's not about, oh, hey, like everybody's using this, I need to be. It's about what is going to make the impact for your own business. I tend to actually help quite a few of my clients figure out what to use, whether it's a productivity tool or a specific ad and aggregate tool. So it's always important for me to start with a criteria. I mean, price is a huge one, right? Everybody kind of has, hey, I don't want to pay more than this and that. But always understand that there's ways that you can kind of negotiate. There's always discounts. So don't let that stop you if that is going to save you time and money in the long run. The next thing is really come up with what is most important to you. What do you really want to achieve with this? And set it as a metric, as a goal. And test out this tool if you can. Some of them allow, free trials and other aspects of it, and really understand what you're measuring. I come from a very big data background. I mean, marketing to me is really utilizing the data that you have more so than anything. So understanding what you're measuring, what the end result is, and having that check-in at the end of that time period that you're testing it out to really understand, okay, so this is giving us these results. This is really improving and impacting our work balance. I think those are really, really important factors to it.
Awesome. And Christina, I'd love to hold the mic on you because I have received a private question that I think you are the perfect person to answer this. So this question reads, where do you start looking to market or advertise if you have a new product to reach the broadest audience? And how do you know which strategy is the best for your product?
I would argue that the broadest audience is not necessarily the best. You definitely need enough of a volume in order for you to test something, but really think about your target market. Think about who you're going after. And it's important for us to validate those things. I think in the beginning, everybody's like, oh, okay, so like I'm going to market to, these companies, this size, to these specific people. And then as we keep on testing things, we find that that may not necessarily be the case, or we may be finding subsets of these things that are working. So I would say, come up with your thesis, your theory, right? And understand how to test it. If you think that your target market is a specific subset of people, try going after them. seeing what you can learn from them, see what can work with that, and then understand based on that data. So in terms of a specific platform, I mean, Google Ads is one of my favorites purely because it's very intent driven. So when you're scrolling on any sort of social media, you're kind of passively going through the content. But when you are advertising on Google, somebody's actively writing in what they're needing at the moment that they're needing it, presumably. So that's one of the best ways for somebody to be reached at that moment when that intent is present. So I would definitely suggest at the very least, try to test that.
It's like the big message I'm getting just all around is it's not a one size fits all kind of thing, even when it comes to seeing like what is the best way to go about, reaching the audience. And Christina, thank you so much for saying that it's not always about getting the broadest audience. The person that messaged me privately is thanking us for this response and for lifting their question up live. So this is also a great time to call out. We've got a little over 20 minutes left. So if you haven't been able to write a question or reflection in the chat, please do so. We want to hear from you. I do have about 5 more pre-submitted questions to go through. But again, if you're here live with us and you didn't get to submit a question, please drop them in the chat. All right, Trey, I'm coming over to you. So how can we know it's time for a change in our technologies?
I'll kind of repeat what's been said many times before. Metrics. If something, you have to be honest with yourself and be objective with yourself and in your team. And is this working for us? Are we seeing the numbers that we want? Are we seeing the return on investment that we want to get out of this product or platform? I do brand myself as a web developer, but I still do social media marketing for a handful of clients. And there are some clients who still just want to throw money at Facebook because they want to be active on social media. But for a number of other clients, I work with a handful of races here in town. Our metric is race registrations. And when I started to see numbers trend upward with video content on Instagram and subsequently TikTok, that's where we started to put our efforts, because there was a higher return for us in that sense. So I guess my advice is to not be hesitant to try something new if something that you're currently doing is only yielding the same results it always has. If you're not, moving forward, if you're not getting the results that you set for your quarter or your year, give something else a try and experiment with it.
I love that. Again, experimentation is coming through. And I got some private messages coming through. So this is great. We got more folks asking things here. But before we move on to the next question, Amir and Christina, I would love to know as well, how do you all know it's time for a change? Can you give some stories maybe in your life where you're like, this is like, ancient at this point, or, this is actually driving me deep into a rabbit hole that I didn't want to be in? Do you have any lived experience that you can share on, how you knew it was time to change it up?
Yeah, I think the one thing that people just in general we should always remember is that technology and tools, their purpose is to make our lives easier. And if they're not doing that, there's something wrong. And I know it's easy to say that, but that's really essentially why we use technology and tools, right? To make our lives easier in whatever function we're using them in. And so if we find, again, I'm big about the human empathy piece of this, because I think that at the end of the day, we're humans using these tools and to make our lives better. And so I think it's gauging, is your team, are the people around you, is this really making a difference, right? Is it making their jobs easier? Is it making their productivity skyrocket? And if it's not, it's like a pretty clear-cut answer that if there's an alternative, let's try that. So I'm less like kind of metrics driven in some ways. I think with ad platforms and things, you definitely have to be metrics driven. But I think when it comes to general, like for example, my background is engineering. And so there's a lot of different frameworks and tools you use in engineering. Some are like popular because, people use them all the time. Some are, and there's just so many, right? And so it's not one size fits all. It's kind of like I've used different tools in different capacities, but I've also used something and been like, well, this is making my life and what I'm trying to do so much harder, even though this is what everyone uses for my purpose. This doesn't work. And I need to change it. I need to find something different, something that fits my the puzzle that I'm trying to build fits that piece in, right? And so, again, it's like situation, but I think it really comes down to, is it really making your life easier? And if it's not, there's definitely that's a very kind of like big red flag. And I think that's when you start looking at, okay, what else can I be doing here?
I love that. Christina, I'm going to pass the mic to you, but I'm also going to give you this next question that I think you can probably tie it in. So how can we, yeah, bring it on. Yes. I'll pass the crown to you next. Okay. So how can we anticipate changes in technology? And then also if you could touch on, how it's time to change it up.
So on a personal note, I tried a productivity tool and I swear, like maybe 3 hours just like making it all nice and pretty, creating like all these to-dos for me. And by the 5th day, I have completely like stopped using it. And I thought to myself, okay, so I think that I wasted all this time, setting this up. I really should use it. And ultimately, it just did not work for me. So that was a lesson that I learned in terms of give yourself a little bit of time before you fully integrate it with everything, before you fully, dedicate so much time on it, unless you have somebody that can really walk you through it. Because the moment that I spoke to somebody else that had been using it, they're like, oh no, you don't need to do all that. Like you could have just done it in a very simple way. I wish that I talked to that person from the very get-go because, I spent a long time setting it up and then never using it again. So going into trying out something new, going into choosing any tool whatsoever, really think about what you want to get out of it, and the best way for you to learn about it as fast as possible before you do a lot more of an investment in there. And I'm sorry, what was the actual question?
Absolutely. So how can we anticipate changes in technology? I mean, I'm sure it's fair to say just anticipate it because it's happening, but how would you turn on that radar?
Change is the only constant to a degree. There's always going to be changes in technology specifically, and it happens so quickly, which could be both a good and bad thing, right? Good because the progress, bad because we need to constantly keep up. So I would always anticipate a change. And the analytical way that I normally do this is, well, first of all, as Trey said, keep up with the trends, whether it's newsletters, podcasts, anything, any announcements of these changes earlier on are going to prep you and give you enough time for you to understand that that's happening. So really having a trusted resource that you can go to and say, okay, these things are about to happen, do these things about it. Really, really important. The other thing is that I like to take the thinking out of problem solving as much as possible. So having a process, for instance, I love to have a testing process. I give a certain amount of days. I have a certain set of things that I need to do. And then once I test it, I know how that is going to affect my business. So try to come up with a little process for yourself for any change in anything, whether it's a new feature, whether it's a new product, a new tool, of you figuring out how you want to test it in a quick and effective way.
I love that. And I forgot, I wanted to comment on your previous response. Again, one size doesn't fit all kind of reflection here. I consider myself a visual learner. So in order for me to help get my vision across or to see what I need to do for myself, especially if I'm working with other people, I can set up this whole like visual experience. And I'm like, and then maybe 2 days, I realized I don't even need that tool. And to not be hard on myself, it's like, actually, this helped me communicate at least something in my mind and to other people. So I love just the, trial and error phase, and also being kind to ourselves. If we figure out maybe we spent the last 24 hours using this tool, but we know we don't need it anymore. So I've been there. All right, so we've got about 15 minutes left. I told you all that time would fly. Trey, I'm coming over to you. So we also often speak about ageism in the workplace here on these Chat and Learn. So this question kind of leads into that a little more. So what do you recommend for the older generations as it relates to keeping up with all of the changes and impactful tools they are using at work? And I know that even we talk about when folks who are maybe ostracized in during interviews or during the hiring process if they don't know about certain tools and how that can be related to ageism in the workplace. So would love for you to speak to this right now.
Sure. This question gets me because I'm going to be 37 in 1 month, and I've never felt like I've had to try to stay relevant more than I'm trying right now. And it's a tough pill to swallow, but one of the things that I've done is kind of get over myself and realize that the next generation is where all of this is trending, and listening to 20-year-olds and seeing everything that's being done in Silicon Valley and all these companies that are being started, and just not being afraid to engage with others. Thank you very much. And kind of get their feeling toward, what tools that we're using. Don't be afraid to ask, how do you do this? It's for me, it's been about ego, especially when I was in the workplace previously. I felt like I needed to know everything. And if I didn't, and somebody else knew something that I didn't, then I was putting myself way behind. The main goal that I have is having a firm understanding and doing the best possible work that I can. So for me, it's following the trends, it's listening to people who are younger than me, and seeing where the industry is going and kind of taking myself out of it so I can stay relevant, which is hard to do. But that's just kind of what I've been focusing on the last couple of years.
Awesome. Well, happy almost birthday. I wrote that in the chat.
Thank you.
No, age ain't nothing but a number. We know this. But yes, we need to make sure that we're figuring out how to buckle up for the learning curve. That is happening all the time. So it's like, we're not the only ones in that seat. So you're in good company.
One thing I just really want to add, really, it's not about the age whatsoever. I have had 6-year-old clients that know how to use tools better than me. So it is not about the age whatsoever. It's all about what you want to really achieve and how you want to go about learning, because anybody can learn and anybody can be incredible at certain things as long as they enjoy them and they want to.
Absolutely. And we'll all be there one day, so we better be kind to everyone else. All right, Amir, I'm coming to you for this question here. So is there any advice you can give to people that are starting the career path after technology? So career path, I'm assuming this person is meaning, needing to use certain tools and maybe even specifically in the world of technology. So what would you say to this, Amir?
Yeah, I think first figure out, well, first of all, we know tools are in the future, right? They're essential. They're essential to almost every single job in the future. Some kind of tool will be like the main tool you use, and there'll be like some adjacent tools you also end up using. But I think the thing that I really love doing is kind of playing around and building with different tools. And I think if this is much more applicable in software, and like my background is, if you find something interesting that you might think about using, well, use it first of all, like as a hobbyist. Build a little project with it, do something fun with it, learn about how this tool works within the context of it, just like a fun environment. And I think one thing that I've always been, I'm a self-taught learner when it came to like coding. One thing that's been really interesting is that I always found that I was best at using a tool if I had a purpose behind using it, right? Like if I wanted to build something and this was the end goal, then I could figure out, okay, how do I use this tool to get me there, right? Like what kind of things do I need to do to get me to that end goal? And I think once you have that kind of like, it doesn't have to be a big, like lavish goal. It can be something small, but like something that you want to get to. This is what I want to get to. And how do I get there? And then you can kind of like tinker around, build, do different things with that tool and try to get to that end goal. And I think in doing so, you pick up so many more things that you never knew you would pick up just because you have a targeted kind of end state that you want to be in. And I think so really experimentation goes back to like, figuring out what do you want to do, like kind of having some kind of understanding of, okay, well, maybe I want to be in social media or marketing, or I want to be in technology, have some kind of like end state, and then figure out, okay, well, it'd be cool to like build this, or it'd be cool to like advertise this, or it'd be cool to like, what if I was in charge of, if you're a marketer, what if I was in charge of building an ad campaign for Coca-Cola, right? And then kind of thinking about, okay, how would I go about with that, what would I use? What would I say? So I think, again, it's like kind of like looking at it first from a hobbyist point of view. And then as you kind of build out like the skill sets, then you can start looking at, okay, well, now I can start applying this in a more professional context. But I think it's with anything else, it's really kind of not being married to one thing, experimenting and kind of just, having fun with it. I think, again, we're in this professional world, we get so bogged down with all these different things. Tools are here to help us. And I think at the end of the day, we should be using them to make our lives easier.
I love that. Yes, so great. And actually, it's brilliant what you just said with this example, because I've heard of when we do the virtual job fairs and folks are able to ask hiring managers, if I don't have experience or if I'm, deciding to transition into a new field, how can I show my experience? And some folks I've heard that this works if you create your own project. So this is like the hobby mindset. this is how I would do it. These are the tools I would use, and then maybe even do it and show this is my result. And so I love that you're opening up the door in that way, because a lot of times we can get, we can think, well, I don't have the experience, so I can't do it. Whether folks are career transitioning or, coming straight out of college. So I appreciate that response there. All right. So this question actually leans into your response in this previous question a little more, Amir. So I'm going to hold the mic on you a little bit. So what do we need to, excuse me, and let me go back a little bit. Do we need to know coding in depth to be able to transition into technology?
So technology is this kind of like big, huge word, right? Like I think you have to distill, first of all, figure out what technology means to you, right? Now, we were in Web 1.0 like 30 years ago, then Web 2.0 came about, now we're thinking about Web 3.0. And so different job functions within technology require different skill sets. If you want to be a coder, well, then you need to know coding. But there's other functions, for example, there's like product managers now, and that's like something that's come about in the last like 5 to 10 years, is someone who actually builds a product. And this person doesn't need to know coding, for example. They need to know the basics of what coding kind of is, like engineering prowess, and have some kind of like background and, okay, this is how the product might work. But this person really kind of plays a role of like tying the business functions, customer functions, and engineering functions, and kind of ties them all together. And for that, you don't need to know coding. And you can be a very involved person, and you're really kind of like dictating what a product looks like. So I think it's a question that depends on what your goal is. For me, for example, as a coder, I actually code and I build things myself. And so for me, I need to know coding because that's the end goal that I'm trying to achieve. But if my goal was to build product, then I'll find more specialists and people who actually know how to code much better than I do. And I can direct them towards, okay, this is how I think the end things should look like, and this is what you can execute on. So it just depends on what you want to do, right? Like there's QA engineers who don't code much, who write basic code. There's like web designers and web kind of developers who know coding, but not maybe to the depth of a Facebook engineer. So it just depends on what you want to do. But to transition into technology, you do not need to know coding.
I love that. And just another private message here. What are the best tools for software development? And they're listing Python, Java, C++. I don't know all the language, how to say that in English, but you know what I'm trying to say. So can you recommend some of the best tools for software development?
Again, this goes back to what the end goal is, right? So software development, there's like backend stuff for which Python is really effective. There's, if you're a beginner, I think really learning JavaScript is super important, because JavaScript can be used on a back end, it can be used on a front end, it can be used in between with like layers and databases. And so if I were going to recommend one language to kind of start off with for someone, if that's the end goal, like give me one language, I would say JavaScript. It's very powerful and you can do almost every job function in it. But then you want to become specialized. And for specialization, you can learn C++. If you're going into audio, video stuff, you want to get into C++. Java is super crucial for like Android development. If you're trying to do iOS apps, you want to know some Objective-C and Swift, which are C++ languages. So kind of, again, it depends on what you want to play in. You definitely want to know GitHub. I think GitHub is super essential to like where you put code and how you store it. And then you need an IDE, which is basically what you code in. And I love VS Code for mine. It's super powerful, has a bunch of extensions, is maintained by Microsoft, and is just like a really, really good IDE for you to code in. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. Thank you for taking us down the wormhole. I think that they wanted it. They were messaging you there privately. So thank you. Someone needed to hear all that.
Yeah, of course.
So we've got about 5 minutes. You all have shared a wealth of information. So I'd just love to pass the mic around with just some closing thoughts, words of encouragement, food for thought. And then if you could also remind us how we can connect with you all when this conversation ends, in case some folks want to, continue the conversation. And Christina, I'd like to start with you.
Great.
Put you on the spot.
Words of wisdom, so many and so few that I know. But I think that the most important part for anybody dealing with technology or marketing or anything else is to, I think, to find that trusted person or resource that you can really gain that information that you need from. I think that so many people, whether it's for tools or for anything else in technology, the common theme is always that I would have gone further and I would have done it smoother if I had somebody to walk me through it at the beginning. And finding that for you, whether it is newsletters, podcasts, whatever it is, whether you're following somebody, whether you have somebody that you can call on and talk to at any point, it is extremely, extremely helpful. And that has been one of my biggest, I think, the ways in which I have been doing better in my own life.
I think that's great because I always like to ask guest speakers, if you could give yourself, before you started your career, a piece of advice, what would you give? And clearly, yours is to make sure, that people, are able to do what they need to do there. So it looks like I'm frozen. Maybe I am. I'm frozen.
A little, but you look good still. Oh, did we lose you altogether?
Maybe.
Okay, so Trey, would you like to answer that question?
Sure, I can go ahead. Before starting my own business, I always felt like I was stuck at the company that I was in because I was afraid to make a leap. I had a very fixed mindset back in those days, and it wasn't until I realized that I needed to start working on my goals now if I wanted to accomplish them tomorrow that I finally broke through to having that growth mindset. So if you want to improve your life, if you want to improve yourself and just reach new heights that you never even thought were possible for your life, start working on them now. Prioritize that time. Spend less time with friends for a little bit. Start studying and seeing how much progress you can make in a week, a month, a year. And when you look back, you'll have such a great feeling knowing what you're able to accomplish by making small sacrifices in your life and really pushing yourself forward. And whether it's you want to start a new business or get a new job at some new industry, just start making those strides now because we don't know how much time we have, and that's super important to realize.
Yeah, speaking of time, I had to hop out for a minute. Clearly, I got pushed out of the internet. But I'm so happy that I could help wrap up the last 2 minutes. I'll have to re-listen, Trey, to hear your response. Amir, did you get to respond yet?
No, I was gonna say, just don't be afraid to take risks and don't be afraid to fail because failure is a part of life. I think the people who fail and think it's a bad thing are the ones who maybe don't learn from the experience. So I think if you end up failing, which we all do at some point in our lives, just learn from the experience and try to get some kind of nuggets from that you can be like, okay, well, I'll try not to do this again. And so I think a lot of people are so scared because safety is so easy to find. And I think being able to just go outside of your safe spot or safe zone and be able to take that risk, I think it's super important if you really want to accomplish your dreams because it's easy to be like everyone else. But if you really want to be different, you have to just do things differently.
Yes, I love that. And Trey just wrote in the chat, failure is an amazing learning opportunity. And I'll leave you all here with this acronym that I learned that speaks exactly to this. Fail is first attempt in learning. That just makes it less pressure. So get out there, be you, do you, be your authentic selves, get the tools that help elevate your voice. And thank you all for joining us today. Trey, Amir, and Christina, it's been so lovely to share a virtual time with you all. And I look forward to staying connected. Thank you for everyone who joined us live. Be sure to rewatch this. Look out for the rewatch email. It's going to include a link to resources that have been shared for the next hour or for the past hour here. And I look forward to interviewing you all again. It's nice to hear that you are working on amazing things in the world. So thank you all.
Cool. Awesome.